so you gotta leave early, don't get tied down, right? So anyway, so yeah, I'm Jean-Luc Desroches. I can stand in front of the light, so I can go stand over here so I can control my laptop. So what we'll be talking about is really the value of early decoupling. So I think VM really was a good example of the value of decoupling. One of the key features, of course, is it's very, very rapid, especially later down the road. You get people in. There's also very added value of a bunch of other stuff. We'll get into that. But I thought it was a perfect segue for this talk. I couldn't have asked for a better talk before. So to start off, a little bit about me. I'm on my second co-op term working for Canadian Tire in their innovations lab in the Kitchener-Waterloo area. The goat is our wonderful, wonderful symbol. It's all about being agile, like goats, and bringing a little bit of awesome sauce in everything that we do. So that is the core mentality that we try to bring into our apps. And I hope we're able to bring a bit of that into this presentation. So, first off, just to quickly kind of start with a really basic couple of examples. Classic PHP, basically everything in this page, you have some actual functions in here that are controlling what is being displayed. Everything's very, very tied together between the back end and the front end. It's kind of not an ideal situation to have. There's a lot of issues that can cause down the road, especially. So we'll start talking about decoupling and the value of that. When you're looking at decoupled, I just pulled a basic Angular example here. It doesn't really matter what framework you're using, whether it's Ember, Angular, Backbone. There's lots of different options out there to achieve this goal. But what the key concept behind it is that you want to separate each aspect of your application so that way they are independent of each other. You do not have something that is so dependent on one another that they start breaking each other. It becomes very bloated and complex. So one of the key values that decoupling brings is scalability. So if you build a well-built RESTful API server, it's a very good API server, that API server is now dynamically usable for any application. So let's say your company, you start off with a website. And you take Facebook as an example. They start off as a website. And they've got this wonderful platform where people are using it all the time, and it's really picking up, and you want to now get mobile. Well, if you used decoupling methods early on, and you made sure that API, the server calls you've been making, have been completely separate from the front end, it is absolutely no problem to just build a mobile app. You build the front end for the mobile app, you call your server, you got to go home, have a good day. If you were building off of a lot of the classic PHP models and old .NET models and stuff like that, where everything was very, very knitted together, you suddenly get stuck in situations where you're almost having to rebuild parts that you built before for the back end because now it's part of the front end, and that's just, it's a waste of your time, it's a waste of resources, and then now you have two sets of code you have to maintain and everything else. So it's not very scalable when you're not doing decoupling design. So one of the other aspects, of course, is the independent code. So each section of your code, whether it's your database layer, your API server, and your front end, each of those sections can be torn away from any one of the other sections and replaced. So if you start off and you had a company working with your PHP server and MySQL, and 2 years down the road, you go, hey, well, you know what? We could really benefit from going to MongoDB. Well, that would not be very difficult if your database is completely separate because your middle end would just be calling whatever database exists. It doesn't really matter which one it is, and pulling the data. Same thing applies to the server. If you have built your server in PHP, if you follow the standard RESTful API method, and you want to rebuild your website now in Node, again, very easy to do. Obviously you have to rebuild it, but if you rebuild it, you don't have to worry about now each section of your code exploding because it's not following some sort of standard method, and you just quickly go from there. And keeping it standardized, again, is very, very key to keeping it scalable, as well as decoupling. Because if you start making very specific calls and making kind of custom callbacks all over the place with everything, you end up with something that you end up having to go through all the documentation for everything every single time to just figure out how do I get this data and how do I get that data. Following a standard method will help with that. So one of the other aspects, of course, is code reusability. So again, that RESTful API you built as Facebook, for instance, you can now use that same API for your mobile app. You can use it for anything you really want. If you suddenly want to branch it to a different section and use that API to present a different way of using the web, let's say you want to rebuild your front end. You've got a standard back end, it doesn't really matter. Just you can rebuild the front end on the side, switch it over in one day, and boom, you're done, because it's very standardized and reusable. The other aspect it brings is hardening your code. So when your apps are decoupled, one of the key benefits is when the applications, when the various aspects of your website are communicating with each other, if it is standardized in such a way that is well decoupled, you're not going to have issues with, somebody threw in some random piece of code somewhere at the front end that you didn't know about because it was thrown on some other page that was tied with scripts to this page, and now you're going, well, why isn't this app working? I'm doing the same thing here. Again, it has to do with keeping it clean, keeping it simple. I think that's really, really valuable. Again, because of the scalability. I mean, scalability is one of the biggest things, really, to keeping it decoupled. Beyond, obviously, how quickly it is and everything goes out with a decoupled design, the ability to now branch your app or your idea into new fields is invaluable, because we're not living in a world where everyone's just going to go to www for something. They're going to want to find you on their iPhones. They're going to want to find you on their Android device. They could be looking for you anywhere, and if you can find a way to quickly and easily achieve that, that will add a lot of value to your company or your app or whatever you're doing. It'll make sure that it's something very easy for you to do. So of course, the value is time and money, right? So you build a well-documented RESTful API server, you separate your database layer, you separate your front end, and those pieces of code are now something that are easily transferable, easily upgradable, which means that as you bring in developers or you have years down the road people are working on this, you're not spending time rebuilding components over and over and over again, having to dig further and further through the rabbit hole of old code and old pieces of data here and there and left and right, which of course translates to money and a lot of money as it ages. So early decoupling is really the key aspect that I want to really talk about with this. So a lot of times when people are building apps and they want to kind of quickly get it out there, they mash it out and they just get it working. And that's something that I think that a lot of developers need to start getting away from and thinking about scalability in the future. A lot of these new features and abilities that AngularJS and React.js and Backbone bring to us allow us to really build something that can last the company a lot longer and provide everyone with better value to what they build. Any questions?